All right, so can we get your name?
Yes, my name is JoAnns. My maiden name was Smith, and my married name is Rossi.
All right.
I was named after my grandmother Josephine and my mother's best friend Anne. But I would prefer to be named Joanna. For some reason, I love that name, but it didn't happen.
All right, so can you tell us when and where you were born?
I was born in Seattle in 1933, July 3rd.
And did you grow up in Seattle?
No, when I was 3 years old, well, we lived in North Seattle, and when I was 3, my father bought a farm in Alderwood Manor. Mm-hmm. And so in 1937, we went to Alderwood, and that's where I grew up on a farm.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like you were trouble as a kid? Like you just always got into trouble?
No.
You were the good one?
No, I was a good child. I was an only child, so you know, parents focus on that child.
And did you have to work on the farm with your dad?
I did. I helped my father. My mother, until I started school, she stayed home, and then when I went into the first grade, she worked in town in Seattle, where she had worked before we moved to the farm. And but I helped my father. He had a poultry farm, and we had an inventory of about 10,000 chickens at any one time. So it was a pretty good-sized farm, and I would help there sometimes in the chicken house, you know, feeding and watering, and wasn't that crazy about doing it either.
Did you ever wish you had siblings? Or
Yes,
were you
always. Always, because being an only child on a farm, on a big farm too, it was 10 acres, I learned to, you know, entertain myself. I had a dog, and my dog was just like my family to me. Mm-hmm. In fact, I remember in the 4th grade, we were to write about our siblings, teacher's assignment, and I remember writing that I had one sister, and she was my dog Daisy. And after class, the teacher said, "I want you to stay behind." And she talked to me, and she wanted to tell me it was very important that I realize that she was a dog and not a human.
Oh my gosh.
That's farm living.
So you went to elementary school, and then did you go all the way through to high school?
I went through the 7 grades well, actually I went up to the 7th grade, and then we moved into North Seattle. And so then I went on to high school in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
But I, you know, my formative years were at Alderwood Manor in the grade schools. High school there.
So did your father sell the poultry farm when you moved to North Seattle then?
No, my father and mother, after being married for 17 years, parted company. They divorced. And my mother was born in, well, Chicago, but she was a city girl from Southern California, and the farm was not her way of life. And so she and I moved back to North Seattle.
So what did you do exactly on the farm? What was your chores?
Well, I had to do some kitchen work. I washed the dishes because we didn't have dishwashers in those days. And so I did that, and I helped clean the house. I actually did a lot of things besides helping my father. But I had a lot of time on my hands because there weren't a lot of children in the neighborhood either. So I was there, except when I was in school. I was pretty much on the farm.
Did you have, at school, was it a small class that you were in? Or
No, it wasn't. We had, I think, about 43 people in our class. I thought you might like to see this. This is our 3rd grade class.
Wow.
And I'm right there, I believe.
Aww.
And we have, I didn't go to Edmonds High School. Most of these students went on to Edmonds High School.
Oh, right.
And I went to Lincoln, of course, because we were in Seattle. But they still invite me to their high school reunions. And this was our 55th. And I thought you might like to see this. Of course, I forgot that there was going to be a camera here. But these people are in that photo.
Oh, really?
Yes, we're all 79, 80 years old.
That is so.
I mean, this was taken 6 years ago.
That's amazing that you guys
but isn't
still
that interesting?
Keep in contact. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And this is the school that I went to. And this is Alderwood Grade School, which is no longer there. You know where the visitors, not the visitor center, but the big, the new building there on 196th, I can't think of the name of it. Can you suggest it? Do you know what it is?
Fred Meyer.
No, it would be down into Alderwood Manor. As you're going into Alderwood Manor, it's the big convention center. That's it. The big convention center.
Yeah.
This was right across the street, up on the hill, and it was cleared away about 15 years ago. But that was the grade school that I went to. Can I see that?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So as a child, what was your favorite activity? Did you like to play games, or were you a reader, or?
Well, yes, I was a reader, and I did like to. I climbed trees a lot. I really was kind of a tomboy because that's what was available to me on the farm, trees, and we had a stream going through the farm, and I would go down with my dog Daisy, and we'd try and I'd catch minnows, in the coffee can. It's just. I'm sure you don't relate to any of this, but that's the way it was in 1937. We had no TV, we didn't have any of the modern appliances, so everything you kind of did by hand, and you were outdoors. Yeah, you just didn't sit around and watch TV or anything like that. Yeah.
So do you have a best childhood memory?
I have a lot of wonderful. I think Christmas was always my favorite, and the fact that when it snowed, we had snow there. We were at a higher elevation, like them down here in Edmonds, where we're, and so it was wonderful. And I remember tramping through the woods with my father, looking for Christmas trees, and it was just really. It was nice being on the farm at that time. And summer was also very nice because we had a lot of trees there and whatnot on our property, on our 10 acres. And so I could spend a lot of time with my dog, tramping the grounds. And then, of course, we used to go swimming. There were a lot of little lakes around here and swimming holes that we would go to, have picnics.
And would you do that with your friends?
Because I was kind of isolated there. You see where our farm was, you know where 44th Avenue is? Are you familiar with that? You know where Fred Meyer is?
Yeah.
Okay, 44th runs just north of, right down, it goes, it's just east of Fred Meyer and it goes down. And we were down at the end. You know where the Linwood Park and Ride is?
Yeah.
That was our farm. That was it. So I had to walk all the way from there up to school when I was a child, because during the war, Second World War, there was they used to people they didn't sell very much gas. You couldn't have very much gas because of the war. Everything was kind of limited, and so I had to walk to school by myself. And it was a long walk.
From what age?
It's over a mile.
From when you were
6.
6.
Yeah, I mean, out there walking by myself. I mean, I wouldn't let my 12-year-old daughter do that.
So did the war have a big impact on you when you were a child?
It really did. I remember a lot of things about the war. We had ration stamps, and there again, you had to use these stamps to buy gasoline for your car, certain food products, and the war effort was really, they tried to enlist all people's efforts, and I think that was such a wonderful thing because we all felt like we were really more a part of it than we are today. We see things on TV, but we get political. But
did you have any family, friends, or parents of your friends that were enlisted in the war and went over, or?
Well, yes, we did. I had probably some uncles and aunts. I even had an aunt, I think, but that was kind of remote for me because, as I say, most of my relatives lived in California.
Yeah.
So, and Indiana.
Did you ever go and visit them once you were older?
I went down to California when I was 12, and it was just heaven. It was just, I mean, the weather was so gorgeous and warm, and I stayed, and we went swimming in swimming pools rather than in muddy lakes. and I stayed with my cousins there, and that was really, I did that a couple of times.
And how did you travel down to California?
Well, I went down with my mother, and then she came. No, I traveled down with my aunt and uncle. They had come up to Seattle, and I traveled down with them in the car, and then my mother flew down later, and we flew back. And that was quite an exciting thing at 13 to be flying, you know.
So, how were airplanes back then?
Well, not much different than they are today, except the stewardesses were all dressed up and wore little hats and, you know, and high heels and dresses, not dresses, but like suits. And that was kind of exciting. My mother and I also took the train down one time to California, and we slept in an upper berth, and that was more memorable to me. It was so much fun being in this upper berth, and you'd go through the little cities, you know, and you'd hear the train and the whistle blowing and everything, and I don't know, it's just something about on the rocking of a train. That was really impressive to me, more than flying was.
Wow, that's amazing that you got to experience that.
I'm glad they still have trains, and I think they ought to bring back more, you know.
Yeah.
What about sports? Did you ever get into the sports, or were you like?
Yeah, I played basketball. We had square dancing out in the country, you know, country school. So it wasn't considered a sport, but that was one of the real activities that I got involved in. And I played basketball and baseball. Loved baseball. Loved playing it. But that was pretty much it. When I got into high school, I discovered boys. I wasn't interested in sports.
Did your school have any school teams for girls?
School teams? Well, if they did, I don't recall being on them.
And then after high school, did you go on to any other schooling, or was that the last of it?
I graduated from Lincoln High School in 1951, and I had a chance to get a summer job at the Mason Clinic downtown Seattle, and it was supposed to be a temporary job, and I was going to start the UW, and then I was tired of school, and I just decided that I would work a while, and I never went back. I worked for 5 years at this Mason Clinic, and I worked in the coding department where you code the diagnoses of the patients, and it was quite an interesting job, and I liked it so much. And then, of course, I married at age 22. My husband, he went to Ballard, he graduated from Ballard, and so I never got there. I took college courses later on down the road, but no, I never graduated from college.
Okay. So, did you have any other jobs besides the Mason Clinic?
No, I wanted to stay home because my mother worked when I was a child, and I was on that farm alone. I said, I'm never going to do that to my children. I'm going to be home when I raise children. We had a son and a daughter, and I stayed home the entire time until they went off to college, high school and college. And what did I do? I did a couple of little things that were temporary. When we then for about, I'm trying to think of the age span here, for about 23 years I worked with, I managed rentals, and they were our rentals. So my husband had his job in Seattle, and I worked managing these rentals. We had 6 units, so I was dealing with 6 different families, and that was a full-time job. Yeah.
So where did you meet your husband?
Well, he went to Ballard High School. I went to Lincoln High School, and we met at a dance or some such thing.
Aww. So while you guys were in high school, and then you just...
I was dating one of his best friends, and he just kind of moved in. I mean, moved in on him.
So how did you know that your husband was the one?
You know, I didn't know for a long time. I liked him because he was such a good friend, and I think that's why.
Oh. So, how did he propose?
I can remember now how that happened. No, it wasn't one of those getting down on his knees or anything. I think we just discussed it one night, and we had been dating for some time. We've been married, it'll be 57 years next month.
Oh. Wow. Did you always know you wanted kids, though?
Yes.
That was definitely something you always
Definitely wanted children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And so, what do your kids do now?
My children?
Yes.
Nicholas is going to be 57 in November, and he works for the University of Washington. When he graduated from Western, he went to work at the university. He's been there ever since, for about 25, 26 years now. And I can't believe he's going to be 57. I thought I was 57. Our daughter, Angela, and they have children, by the way. One of his sons lives in Indianapolis, and the other one, 2 years ago, graduated from the Special Forces, so he's a Green Beret.
Wow.
And he's out and traveling a lot and doing a lot of things. He's been to Afghanistan, he's been to Kosovo. Now he's working more with embassies and whatnot, so we don't hear until after the fact what's
going on.
What's
Yeah.
happening.
Our daughter is, she's 53. Is that right? She's 54. And she's married and has a daughter who just graduated from Central, I was telling you. So our daughter, she stayed home and raised her daughter, and then she decided she wanted to go back to the classroom, so she did. And she said, you know, Mother, I've always wanted to cut hair. So she went to Shoreline Community College, took the courses, did all that she had to do, and got her certificate and everything. And she's working for James Allen down here, kind of a high end, and she does very well.
That's awesome.
So, how did you adjust to becoming a grandma?
Well, I loved it. I mean, it was, I thought, oh, that's a novel idea, but once the baby came, my granddaughter, I just couldn't believe it. And we were very fortunate because she would come and stay one night a week with us. We kind of did that. We wanted her to come, but we also did to give our daughter a break, you know. But she came until she was 10. And it was great, you know. It kept us young and doing things, and she really looked forward to coming. And then suddenly when she turned 10, she says, well, gee, Grandma, I can't come this week because I've got basketball, volleyball, I got, you know, girlfriends. And oh, I tell you, I grieved. It was hard because we were so used to having her, you know, once a week. Yeah. She's doing fine, so am I.
She's still alive.
She's very much alive.
So, do you have an ethnic background at all?
Well, yes. My great-great-grandfather came from Germany and France. I mean, they are of French and German origin, but he was German. His name was Schmidt, Schmitt. I did a little bit of work on this, so that's how I know. And he came from Germany, and they landed we don't know the port of entry because a lot of old files for these people who have, you know, come to our country, they were lost in either fire or water damage or something. But as far back as we can tell, and that was in 1832.
Wow.
1832. And the reason I know this is because he brought his wife, this is my great-great-grandfather, he brought his wife and his 2 daughters, and the wife was pregnant on an old sailing ship, if you can imagine, crossing the Atlantic. And she must have been 8.5, 9 months pregnant because she bore my great-grandfather on the ship. And that's, his record said he was born in the Atlantic Ocean.
That's so cool.
And it was on a ship named the Crescent. And so he was named Peter Crescent Schmidt, but when they came to the United States, they changed the name to Smith. They did that on entry a lot of times. So my great-grandfather was Peter Crescent Smith, and my son looks a lot like him. Yeah, and being an only child, I didn't know any of this. My father was a rather quiet man, but he told me that he was an altar boy at a church in this little town where he lived in Indiana, southern Indiana. And so when we divorced, when we retired, my husband said to me, we had a computer, he says, why don't you look up on the computer, you know, where your dad came from? And I said, Jack, it's so small, it's not even on the map. I typed it in, and sure enough, there was the church that my father had been an altar boy in. They were celebrating the 175th anniversary of this church. So, guess what that led to? I wrote, well, I called him, and then they sent me names of Smiths in the church, in the parish. I wrote letters to about 5 or 6 Smiths in the parish. I got a call about 4 days later. Hello, JoAnn, this is your cousin Bill, calling from Indiana.
Wow.
And I didn't even know I had any cousins back there.
Oh.
Well, long story short, we went back. That was in the year 2000. And I went back. I said, Bill, I'm coming back because I want to see the church my father was altar boy in. I met Bill. I met his cousins and his brothers and all. And I have about 75 cousins back there.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
second cousins, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
So, you know, being an only child, suddenly
You have all
everything
this
changed.
family. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was in 2000. I met Bill, and he calls me about every other week, and we chat all the time. He's
That's
from
awesome.
Indiana.
Oh my gosh. So, we're going to ask some general
21
questions.
minutes.
Okay.
Well, I guess we can. So, what is the most important and meaningful lesson that you have learned in life, and why?
I think honesty has been important to me. Probably because the times I maybe wasn't honest, it backfired. And I think fairness and honesty have always been important to me.
What are you most proud of in yourself or in your family? Or
I'm proud of having been a mother and raising 2 children. I'm very proud of my children.
What is the happiest moment in your life?
When I'm with my family and my friends. I have some very long-standing friends.
We saw the pictures.
Yes. Yeah.
what would you say the saddest moment in your life was? And you don't.
I don't think I should tell you that.
Okay.
I'm having a hard enough time as it is.
What is something about yourself that no one else would know?
I probably would have liked to take acting lessons, voice lessons.
Just always been a thing. We should
How
talk
would-
about spirituality.
Yeah, actually. So, when you were a young child, were you religious at all? Or was your
Well, my
family?
mother and father were both born and raised in a church. But when they moved to the country, they kind of got away from it. And oddly enough, I found myself always going to local churches, either with friends or on occasions, Easter and Christmas and that sort of thing. And so, no, I really wasn't, because the church, well, you know, in a country, it's hard to get around, for one thing. It's not like taking buses like you can do in town. But when I was older, I found the church. I found a church.
What type of religion, like denomination?
Catholic.
Okay.
And so,
Actually, I have a question about transportation. So did you guys have a car?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Yes, we have.
And then did your mom use that mostly when she was going to work? Or?
No, we used to have to take her up to, it was called the Alderwood Crossroads, which is now Linwood you know, 196th and Highway 99. That's Linwood right there. And we would take her, and she would take the huge Greyhound bus into town to work.
Yeah.
And then we'd pick her up in the evening. My father kept the car, and then he would, sometimes he would take me after that rationing was over, you know, then he would take me to school so I didn't have to walk so far.
Oh.
Did your parents teach you how to drive, or did you ever
No,
learn,
I
or?
took driving lessons,
Okay.
yeah, when I was in high school.
Mhm.
So was buses a common form of transportation back then?
Well, for those on the farm, if you didn't have a car, that's what you did. But it was trying to get to a bus was not, it wasn't that easy, you know, as it is now. Yeah.
Did you go on any like little day trips anywhere, like take the train up to Canada or anything, or over to Eastern
When I was
Washington?
a child, I remember going to, taking they had I think it was called the Princess Margaret ship that went from Seattle. It sailed up to Victoria, Canada. That was before they had the new ones, you know. And I would go up there with my mother, and we'd stay overnight because she was very fond of purchasing china, bone china from Canada. Well, it came from England originally. And so we would take trips up there. Yeah.
That's fun.
Did you go on any big vacations when you were a kid?
Not a lot. No, because I think my father had to stay close to the farm, having all those chickens, you know. Even when we would go away for a day, he'd have to get back to water and feed them, so, yeah.
Once your parents separated, did you go between the two, or did you mostly stay? Okay.
Yeah, I lived with my mother because that was the norm at that time. But I would always come out and visit Dad, and I was very close to my father, very close to my father.
Did your parents ever date or find someone else that you were brought around, like a step?
My
dad
mother
or stepmom?
remarried.
Okay.
She eventually remarried, and so did my father. Yeah.
Did you enjoy them
Uh,
being married, or were you?
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was fine.
resistant?
No,
Yeah.
it was a friendly arrangement, you know. And no, my mother's second husband was a very fine man, and I really liked him. We were good friends, very good friends.
So what did your dad do with all those chickens or poultry?
Well, he raised them from day old, those cute little fuzzy things, you know how cute they were.
Yeah.
And in about 3 days, they started sprouting feathers, and they looked ugly. They started getting homely, you know.
Yeah.
And by the time they were 6 weeks old, then they became friars, and then he would load them up. He'd have help on the farm. He'd load them into these batteries and take them into town and sell them in Chinatown. Yeah. And in Chinatown, they had it was called Kwang Hua was the name of the store. I used to go in with him, and people would come in, and they would pick out the batteries. They'd just take them in, you know, stick them in there. People would come in and pick out the very chicken that they wanted. And then they would take them in the back, wring their neck, and stick them in boiling water and defeather them right then and there. Strip them, and yeah, and then they would take them home. That's the way they did it.
And did you watch them do that?
Sometimes, yeah. Well,
I don't think I can watch it.
No, it was, you know, wasn't the greatest thing.
Yeah.
But the funny thing of it was, then when we go into this man's office, his name was, I don't know what his name was, but he was Chinese, and he hardly spoke English. So we went into the office, and he would open up his drawer to pay my father. He didn't even have a cash register. He'd have an abacus, you know those little things with the black beads on them? Have you ever seen them?
Yeah.
And he'd figure it out. No receipt, no nothing. He would just pull out bills out of this drawer, and there were feathers and dust everywhere. You know? But anyway, those are my memories of my dad and his business.
Do you have any memories of your mom and her business at all?
Not really. I didn't spend as much time with my mom at her. My father was on the farm. It was right there where I lived, so that was a little easier, you know, to spend time with. Yeah.
So you only had that one dog? There was no other types of pets?
No, I had. I think we might have had a cat at one time, but for the most part, the dogs. And she was a beautiful dog. I'll have to show you a picture of her. Here's me and my dog, right there.
Aww.
I think I was maybe about 8 years old
Is that
there.
border collie?
It's
Or-
you know, I'm not sure. What we never did figure out what she was. But when I used to walk to school, she was behind a fence, and this fence said, "Beware of dog." And I walked to school, you know, and I'd always look, and she'd always come up and tail wagging and everything. And finally I started sticking my hand in the fence and petting her. And then I started saving parts of my lunch, you know, and I'd feed her on the way home. and one day the lady who owned her came out and she said, "Do you like my dog Sandy?" And I said, "I really do." And she says, "Would you like her? I'd like to have her." And she says, if you go home and ask your parents, if they say you can have her, you can have her. And so I could hardly get home fast enough, you know. And sure enough, and that's how I got my dog. And I renamed her Daisy. And she was my sister all those years growing up on the farm.
That's awesome.
How long did she live for?
She lived all the time I was there. And then one day a man came. She used to lay out in the sun, you know. And a man came to pick up some chickens from my dad and backed over her. And so that was the end of it.
Oh, that's horrific.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But she was a good dog.
Yeah.
And she was really good company. So.
All right, so is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't say?
Well, I thought we were going to focus more on the farm, but I'm glad. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that we had the only swimming pool in Alderwood Manor. And this house, the farm, and everything was built about 1919. Because Puget Mill came out and cleared thousands of acres here in South Snohomish County, mostly around Alderwood Manor and that area. And so there were a lot of stump farms. That's how they advertised all over the United States, "Please come and be a gentleman farmer. You could have 5-acre plot in Alderwood Manor." So anyway, this lady came out. She must have been fairly wealthy because she bought the 10 acres and had this pool built. Now that's around 1929, we think it was taken. But look at all the children that were there at that time.
Gosh.
There must be, I think I counted around, 13 kids in that pool. And it was a good-sized pool. Yeah.
And this was there once you moved in?
It was there when we moved in 1937. And here's a picture of it that I took when we lived there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I took two
the ground
pictures.
kind of-
Yeah, I took 2 pictures and put them together.
Oh my gosh.
And it really hasn't changed much at all. But
So you guys bought the 10 acres as it was? You didn't expand it? Like 2 10 acres?
No,
right?
no.
Okay.
We just kept the 10 acre,
Yeah.
the 2 plats. And but the pool remained. And then when my father sold the property in 1967, bulldozers came in and just cleared everything.
Yeah.
And that's when Levitt's Furniture went in, and the Linwood Park and Ride,
That's crazy to
Stuart
think that
Anderson's restaurant, all that down there.
Wow. How many barn houses are?
We had one
Hens.
huge barn, one
Okay.
long barn,
Mhm.
and I can't tell you how long it is, but when we lived there, it wasn't used primarily for chickens at that time when we first moved in, because we had a cow, we had pigs, we had some pigs, and a lot of chickens running around on the ground, and we had a bull at one time too. So it was a farm.
Right.
Were
Were there a lot of people that worked for your dad? Or
No,
did
he
just-
didn't have a lot of people.
Okay.
He did most of it himself. Yeah, milk
10,000
cows.
chickens?
That's a lot of chickens.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and of course we had them they were in batteries. They weren't free-run chickens. They weren't on the
Okay.
ground, so it's a little bit easier to control.
All
Well,
right.
well,
Thank you for being
Thank
You're
interviewed.
welcome. My pleasure. If I'd been a little more prepared, I probably could have come up with some more succinct answers.
you did really good. Don't worry.